I'm standing next to a 2003 Acura that's a little bit different from most 2003 Acuras. That's because this 2003 Acura costs $125,000. Of course, this isn't an 03 MDX with Cheetos between the seats. This is an Acura NSX, one of the most iconic sports cars of all time, lent to me by my friends at LBI Limited here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, purveyors of some of the most exciting, exotic, unusual cars on the eastern seaboard. And yes, it's valued at $125,000. Now, if you're not into cars, you might be stunned at the idea of paying $125 grand for a 13-year-old Acura. Even if you are into cars, you might be surprised to hear that an NSX could possibly cost this much. I certainly was, until a friend told me to check NSX prices. Earlier this year at auction, a pristine low-mileage example sold for $144,000. The average list price of a late-model early NSX on AutoTrader is almost $90,000, with nice ones like this routinely listed at well over $100,000. And so I had to round up an NSX to answer the question, is this thing really worth something like $125,000? I'll start with a discussion of what the NSX is and what it isn't. What it is an iconic sports car originally offered in the early 1990s as a competitor to exotic brands like Ferrari and Lamborghini, with a reliable V6 from a Japanese car company. Acura kept it on the market, never fully redesigned, for almost 15 years. And even as exotic cars got more aggressive and loud and fast and showy, the NSX remained, well, the NSX, a sports car that focused on handling and driving excitement over brand recognition and showing off. What the NSX isn't is a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. There's no prancing horse or raging bull on the hood. You can't see the engine through the glass in back. The NSX's V6 engine and stock exhaust won't make a V8 scream as you drive through a tunnel. And when you drive down the street, teenagers with cameras the size of their heads won't be chasing you down for a picture. But in terms of pricing, a 2004 Ferrari 360 is worth somewhere between $75,000 and $100,000. A 2004 Lamborghini Gallardo is worth somewhere between $90,000 and $110,000. But this is just an Acura. So to find out if it's worth it, we start with a tour. Now, this particular NSX has only 8,600 miles on it, and it's pristine and perfect, and everything works. And the first thing you notice when you climb inside this car is, compared to an Italian exotic, just how functional everything is. For example, just opening the door. You go for the door handle and it's not shaved off the side or under some strake like some Italian exotic. It's just a door handle. You pull it and it opens. Speaking of the door, Acura didn't even bother to hide any of this car's exterior keyholes to make it more beautiful or streamlined or perfect. They're just functional. They're keyholes. You want to open the door? You stick the key in. On the door, you have the power windows, power mirrors, and power locks. Simple. Now, this may not seem like much, but on the Ferrari 360 of the same era, all three of these things were scattered about the interior in 3 different places. That functionality carries through as you get further inside the car, where there's no secrecy about where anything is. You want to open the front? Open the front. You want to open the back? Open the back. You want to open the fuel door? Open the fuel door. All marked with simple, well-labeled buttons and levers exactly where you'd expect them to be. And there are 2 other incredible functional items inside. Number 1, this car has cruise control. It's hard to even explain how crazy that must have been in the 1990s for an exotic mid-engine car. No Ferraris, no Lamborghinis had cruise control until only a few years ago. Even crazier, Acura was so committed to this thing's functionality that they gave it cup holders. This is an exotic mid-engine sports car with cup holders. I don't think Ferraris even today have cup holders in them. Another crazy interior function. The clock in most cars doesn't work when the car is off, obviously. In this car, if you push the display button, even when the car is off, it shows you what time it is. Could you imagine that happening in a Ferrari? In a Ferrari, you're lucky if the clock is displaying the correct time, even when the car is on. More Acura function. In a traditional exotic car, they go to great lengths to hide the antenna, to make the car as beautiful and as perfect and as artful as possible. In the NSX, turn on the radio, and it just pops right up. Even the engine cover of this car is functional. Open up the little thing on top of the engine cover and you can stick the Targa roof. Or if you have the Targa roof on, you could place stuff here to store it on top of the engine. It's that functional. But that's not to say the NSX isn't without a few quirks. We'll start with the most interesting quirk, which is the trunk situation. Now, in most mid-engine cars, the engine is back there and the trunk is up there. And I've noticed that that's what most people think the situation is with the NSX, but believe it or not, it isn't. Yes, the engine is in the middle, but up in front, there is no trunk. There's just a smattering of wires and other important components for the vehicle. In fact, the trunk of the NSX is in back, like a trunk for a normal car, right behind the engine. So there are 3 opening orifices on this car. There's the front trunk, which isn't a trunk, there's the hood over the engine, and then there's the actual trunk, which is in back. It's kind of strange. Another kind of weird quirk about this car, right above the window switches and the mirror controls, you have your own personal air conditioning vents, which function just like air conditioning vents in any other car, except they're on the doors. Also, there are a couple of sort of strange buttons in the interior, one of which is the hazard light switch, which is sort of on a little growth out from the steering column, strangely enough. And then there's a little light on the cassette player that says clean. Is that for cleaning your cassettes? Is it so functional that it will clean your cassettes? And so that's the tour, and now it's time for the most important part, the road test. Of course, for more of my thoughts on how the NSX drives, click the link below to check out my column on autotrader.com/oversteer, where I go into a lot more detail on my driving experience in the NSX. All right, we're driving the NSX for the first time. I've never driven an NSX before in my entire life. Oh man. Well, so the first thing you notice is that you're really close to the road. In fact, aside from about 6 inches of bodywork in front of you, you can't see anything else. It's like you in the road. It really feels almost race car-y in that sense. This one just feels factory fresh. Everything is ultra tight. The handling is tight. There's no body roll at all. Even the gear lever is super tight. Also very short throws. Maybe some of the shortest throws I've ever seen in a production car. This is cool. Boy, the ride is not so great. But then again, if you're buying a car like this and you're complaining about the ride, then I don't need you viewing my videos. It's certainly not like a 911. If you buy this car expecting 911 levels of comfort and refinement, it isn't on that level. For one thing, the interior, while functional, it's not incredibly nice. None of the things in here are really ultra high-end. Oh, it's so sweet around just a corner on a highway on-ramp. It's so sweet. No body roll, very predictable handling, very tight steering. It's everything you want from a car like this. But I just floored it. It's not incredibly quick. So this car has 290 horsepower from its little V6. The 430 came out in 04 and it had 500 horsepower. By then, this thing was hardly a competitor for those cars anymore. This car is for twisty back roads. That's where it's fun. And you, unlike a lot of exotic cars, unlike all exotic cars, you can really use the whole car. And it's so much fun to be able to do that. And that also gives you confidence because you know how it's going to react when you're at higher RPMs. In the Viper, you stab the throttle, you're not really sure what's going to happen because you don't really use the top of the rev range all that much. But in this thing, you can use all that stuff, and so you get very confident in this car very quickly. The transmission is so easy and slick. You just can rev match so easily. And I love how tight the gear changes are. It's incredible. The clutch is tremendously easy to use, yeah. And you know exactly, you can very quickly figure out exactly where it catches. I have to admit, I really enjoy driving this thing and no one's staring at you. My biggest complaint about my Ferrari when I had it was that everybody was constantly looking at you and asking you questions and stuff. I haven't had a single person yet even acknowledge my existence. And this one is bright red. It was silver. You could just have your own personal fun and only ever deal with other car enthusiasts, which is the dream. The thing about this car is it doesn't have that big V8 sound. It doesn't and it doesn't have the exotic look or the exotic brand. I mean, I look down at the steering wheel and it says Acura, and so does my fiance's RDX. But it doesn't matter. None of that matters because of how capable it is. You learn to put that stuff aside because it's so awesome to drive. So is the NSX worth $125,000? Well, worth is a very subjective concept, and it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. There are going to be people who watch this video and say there is no way they'd pay 125 grand for an Acura when they could get a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, and that's fine. The NSX is for a special type of person. The kind of person who wants to get up on a Sunday morning and take some great back roads without worrying that they might encounter mechanical trouble, or worrying that they might get noticed and stared at and filmed in a vertical video that will later go on YouTube, or worrying that they might press the gas pedal too hard and fly off the road. Truthfully, I'm not sure if any of these cars are really worth $125,000, but I will say this: if it was up to me, I would much rather have the NSX than a Ferrari 360 Modena or a Lamborghini Gallardo. It's that good.